All right. Can everybody hear me? Are we having a good night? Are we going to be having a good night for long? Who knows? It's been a tricky week, huh? You had Syria getting bombed by Israel. Lots of conflicting news. People deliberately trying to keep information from you, trying to tell you who's being slaughtered. Like they're pulling weird numbers for the Druze here. Uh, like I saw 2,000, and I don't have a source for that. Yeah, like I've seen reports of 2,000 people dead total, but not more than 2,000, like 2,000 Druze individually, and that's fighters and civilians and Bedouins. And like, this is a war. It's not a slaughter. It's a war. Just to be frank. Well, there is a slaughter, but the portrayal of this as a one-sided slaughter is incorrect. Uh, it's a lie being perpetrated by pro-Israeli accounts to try to justify the Israeli attacks and destabilization of Syria. And it's justifying, in addition, their attempts to weaponize accusations of anti-Semitism by saying, "Why don't you care about the genocide, quote unquote, of the Druze?" And let's be frank, I do, but my government isn't supporting that. So yeah, it's been a big week for lies. Obviously, people are really upset at AOC too about the vote for uh, that Marjorie Taylor Greene initiated. It is my understanding that the vote is removes funding for things like Iron Dome, and like I get it. There have been a couple predominant narratives that have been forming. The first is that Iron Dome is not really a defensive weapon, and that it enables Israel to safely engage in genocidal activities in Gaza. And I'll be honest, I don't buy that narrative. Uh, for the same reason I don't buy the next narrative that people are saying these people just want to get Jews killed because they want to remove Iron Dome. And Iron Dome has existed since 2011. It was designed, built, and implemented basically within the last 15, 16 years. And it is explicitly designed to shoot down short-range rockets initially out of Gaza, but also out of Lebanon, fired into Israel. And the rockets they're kind of like big model rockets when you get down to it. The model rockets haven't had that much effect, to be honest, with killing people. I think overall, since the Israeli withdrawal from Gaza, less than 100 people have died from rocket attacks in total. A couple thousand have been wounded. About 2,000, 3,000 have been wounded. And not to minimize that particular suffering, but the problem lies, I think, chiefly in the idea that Israel is protected in any way substantially. Like there's no, like, the way they're making it sound is like before Iron Dome was in place, hundreds and thousands of Israelis were being slaughtered a day, and the simple fact was that wasn't the case. Uh, the reality is that Iron Dome protects against those occasions where a very small rocket hits true. It doesn't make Israel any more genocidal or more inclined to kill civilians. Israel had been killing civilians for its entire history, even before its history. Largely, the revolt against the British Mandate and that began in 1944 was targeting Palestinian civilians, slaughtering villages. After the war started, a number of Palestinian villages signed effective ceasefires with the various Israeli groups and were slaughtered anyway. The reality is that more or less, Iron Dome doesn't have that kind of effect, whether we fund it or not. So you can make those arguments, but ultimately, no. I don't think like AOC is making a big mistake here. or some kind of secret Zionist. I think she has been led by the nose on a particular vote in the past that she had. And you might find it distasteful, but I don't, it's not consequential. Whether Iron Dome being removed does not make Israel stop killing people in Gaza. It's not important ultimately, like insofar as doing this. It doesn't gain us anything, really. They're going to kill people either way. Like, this is probably not the thing to burn AOC down over. Um, it's mechanically inept. just just my 2 cents on that item. You can disagree. I'm sure people will. But it doesn't accomplish anything. Like, Israel's still going to kill people. The rockets aren't the rockets are a futile measure for the most part in the grand strategic scheme of things. They're a way to hurt Israel. They don't hurt it fatally. But that's that. I was asked. Your other comments are auto moderated. Yeah, that might be happening. I was asked to take a look at this video from our friends at InTime. Well, Nick at InTime. Where are the Epstein files and why are they so important? And he asked me to look at it, and I said sure. And so I looked into history of Jeffrey Epstein. And I'll be honest, when this turned up in 2019, I am loath to engage with obvious conspiracy theories without more evidence, because so often they are crazy. So really, I hadn't looked at it extensively till I looked into prepping for the show. And I learned some things about Jeffrey Epstein that dramatically changed my point of view. For example, he was employed at a high school and was that creepy high school teacher who hit on all the girls. And, like, you know, going by what we know now, yeah, that tracks. So we're going to get into this. I'm going to take a 5-second break to grab some water because I should have done that earlier. You guys hold on for me for a minute, then we'll get into this. if you haven't watched Nick in End Time in the past, he does a good job. Go subscribe to End Time.
The Jeffrey Epstein case is long and complicated, and it's hard to get your head around just how big it really is. And because the revelations about Epstein have come out in drips and drabs over the course of 20 years through lawsuits, raids, seizures, depositions, and multiple state and federal investigations, understanding just what we know and what we don't know, understanding the difference between fact and fiction, and understanding why this case is so important can be genuinely challenging. Jeff?
Yeah, I'm going to be perfectly honest. Here's one of the principal problems I have with this case. It involves the sexual harm of children, pedophilia, by multiple parties as of yet unknown, to include Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. The problem I have with this, and I've had this problem for a while, is that we have taken the concept of pedophilia and harming children and who is and is not a pedophile, and we have politicized it. And that gives me, to quote the kids, the ick, to be honest, in a really severe way. You have a particular problem with abuse of all kinds, where the abuser, especially if they're a child, has incredibly little recourse towards getting their situation addressed, being removed from the situation, and protected. The overwhelming majority of these cases, children being abused, they just get abused. No one does anything. No one helps. And this is in spite of like government agencies like Child Protective Services, the role of teachers and psychiatrists and others as mandatory reporters. This is in spite of a number of supposed safeguards that are designed to protect children, and they simply don't. We as Americans tend to treat children as property. It's disgusting. It is bad parenting, and it exacerbates this particular problem immensely. And like, to be honest, like CPS has a hard time removing kids in the first place, whether or not there's a problem. Unless, of course, you're a family of color. And then your situation changes radically, to be honest. And so my issue when we started to, like, it happened around the time, if you think back to when people were moral panicking about the Wayfair catalogs. Like, oh, these Wayfair catalogs are actually secretly ways to traffic children. And they weren't. And like, people spread this rumor over and over again and got real fucking self-righteous about it. And what happens when you take a serious thing like accusations of harming children and you cheapen it by using it as a cheap ploy to try to harm people that you do not like politically? Is you take the accusation and you make it less believable overall. Welcome, Maya's viewers. You make it less believable overall, and therefore it makes it much harder for children who are in danger to get help when they already have a hard time getting help. So when all this breaks, and the focus on Epstein is principally on his harming of children, but he also trafficked adult women to powerful people and recorded them. Jeffrey Epstein is a true slimeball. And the focus of it as a locus of pedophilia is, I think, inappropriate on a lot of levels, because it doesn't capture the true horror of Jeffrey Epstein. And it's in the way that we have politicized these accusations and use these accusations as cheap gimmicks is really sickening to me.
Jeffrey Epstein was born in New York City. He showed an early talent for social interaction, charm, and manipulating people. Despite not graduating college or having a teaching certificate, he managed to finesse a schoolmaster into giving him a job as a physics and math teacher at the Dalton Preparatory School on Manhattan's Upper East Side. While there,
And, like, apparently he got into every single thing that you can be a creepy high school teacher about. He flirted with female students. He gave them extra attention. He went to a high school party where students were drinking. He was a creep. But he was a creep at a powerful school.
reportedly engaged in inappropriate behavior, including flirting with female students, paying them to spend time with him, and attending parties and drinking with underage students. After just 3 years, he was dismissed from the school for, quote, poor performance.
Which is unsurprising when you consider that physics is actually a complicated subject and really tricky to teach if you don't have a formal physics education.
He then went to work for the financial firm Bear Stearns, which collapsed in the financial crisis of 2008.
And it's notable, like, so the reason he goes to work at Bear Stearns is that Bear Stearns' kids attended this school. And he used his connection with his kids to get to the head of Bear Stearns' CEO and get his job with Alan Greenberg.
From there, he started his own consulting firm, IAG, a firm which specialized in the recovery of embezzled money from fraudulent firms and brokers.
And while we're at it, let's talk about finance in general. It's pretty much an open secret that finance is a den of inequities and perversions. A lot of cocaine use, a lot of weird sex stuff. Finance is kind of like the gateway to the ultra rich in a certain sense, and the ultra rich's attitude towards proclivities and laws, which is to say they don't believe that they have to follow laws, and they believe that they can indulge in whatever proclivities they want, safely ensconced inside their cocoon of money.
Friends would later testify that he actually worked both sides, helping some firms to recover stolen money and other firms to steal money and keep it hidden. He also told friends that he was a secret intelligence agent. Indeed, he had a professionally forged Australian passport under a false name, which listed him as living in Saudi Arabia. The forgery was so good that he was able to use this passport to get in and out of multiple countries, including France, England, Saudi Arabia, and the U.S.
I'll be blunt. These kinds of forgeries where you can use the passport are really expensive. This is passport control is a pretty old system. All things considered, it's been being developed for thousands of years as a system overall. It's not your fake ID that you use to get into a bar. This is some primo quality stuff that has to get used. You're not getting it at a fake ID shop or anything like that. You are getting that as a criminal from an intelligence agency. Which one is up to interpretation?
Working as a financier, he used his social skills to network extensively and develop an impressive and eclectic client list. His clients included Adnan Khashoggi, who was the Saudi businessman who transferred weapons from Israel to Iran during the Iran-Contra scandal, John Mitchell, the former U.S. Attorney General under Nixon, and Leslie Wexner, CEO of Victoria's Secret. He was so charismatic, in fact, that he was able to convince Wexner to let him manage all of Wexner's money for him, signing over full power of attorney to Epstein, despite the fact that Epstein had no college degree or any formal training in finance whatsoever. In the late 80s, Epstein met Ghislaine Maxwell. They entered into a romantic relationship, and she appears to have started to run much of his underground empire. She procured and groomed young women for him, forced them to have sex with him and his associates, and managed sex parties at his homes in France, the island of St. James, and in the U.S. In 2005, police began investigating Epstein after a woman accused him of sexually abusing her 14
Yeah, this is one of the things I did not know. Like Epstein, I came on my radar in the 2019 business when he, himself in his prison cell. I did not know that he had been previously charged and convicted. Uh, that makes all of this even more inexcusable to me, to be honest.
18-year-old daughter. Through the course of the investigation, federal officers identified at least 36 underage girls, most between 14 and 16, whom he was alleged to have assaulted, and discovered that he had been procuring children for prostitution to friends and clients. The FBI made a strong case for life in prison for Epstein, and in 2006,
And because he is rich, that definitely didn't happen.
the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida, Alexander Acosta, filed charges. Epstein hired famed attorney Alan Dershowitz, a Harvard law professor who has represented O.J.
Just as a general comment, not so much about the specifics of this case. Alan Dershowitz is basically at the bottom of every shit well you'll ever find. This man is just truly a scum of the earth.
Simpson, Julian Assange, Harvey Weinstein, and Donald Trump. Dershowitz negotiated a plea deal with Epstein.
Dershowitz negotiated a plea deal with the FBI, is what he did. Just a misspeak there. I also would note that Dershowitz himself has made some suspect statements about the age of consent.
This deal was extraordinary. It is so extraordinary, it is still talked about today. In 2000,
yeah, basically he was not imprisoned at all, despite being technically imprisoned.
With 36 credible accusers, Epstein agreed to plead guilty to one count of procuring a child for prostitution and one count of solicitation of prostitution. In exchange for him pleading guilty, he and 4 named collaborators, as well as any collaborators who might be discovered in the future, were given blanket immunity from federal prosecution for any of the crimes associated with any of the victims. He was given the minimum sentence, 13 months in a minimum security prison with extensive work release, allowing him to spend most of his time out of prison for...
Yeah, he just wandered around. So, this deal is, like Nick said, extraordinary. And I suspect, if Nick gets into it, that what has happened, Discord jams. Trump once hosted a party for young women where Epstein was the only guest. When is this? Oh, Jesus, this is today. Jesus Christ. Okay. Take your ad and shove it. Donald Trump once hosted a party with young women where disgraced late pedophile Jeffrey Epstein was the only other guest, according to the report. The president is under pressure to release all files to the Epstein case, which he has so far refused to do, despite a 2024 election promise. The anecdote was part of the New York Times piece on Saturday, which Donald Trump has sued the Wall Street Journal for $20 billion. It states that for 15 years, the two men socialized in Manhattan and Palm Beach, Florida, before falling out that preceded his first arrest. I'm sure there was a falling out about him getting caught. The piece goes to him that it's hosting a party at Mar-a-Lago for young women in a so-called calendar girl competition. Not a calendar woman. Mr. Epstein was the only other guest. The party was organized by George Horney. Recalled being surprised that he was the only person on the guest list. I said, Donald, is this supposed to be a party with VIPs? He told him back in 2019, you're telling me it's you and Epstein? This comes after days after the bombshell Wall Street Journal report about the body message and doodle from Donald Trump celebrating Epstein's 50th birthday. The president has denied the drawing or letter and is now suing the Journal, News Corp, Rupert Murdoch, and 2 journalists. On Friday, Attorney General Pam Bondi released a motion to release grand jury transcripts associated with the Epstein case. That's the end of that article. I suspect, in true fashion, that Epstein's other habits of recording people are why he got this deal.
Work, that work being broadening his network of child prostitution. The indictment was sealed, and with no possibility of bringing charges ever again in the future, the FBI closed their investigation. This outcome was so insane.
The problem with Trump's suit is designed to get the News Corp to settle so that he never has to sit for a deposition. That's why this sum is so outrageous.
Saying that the Justice Department would launch an investigation, and when asked why he would make such a, quote, sweetheart deal, Acosta said that he had been told that Epstein was, in fact, an intelligence agent, that the entire affair was, quote, above his pay grade, and that he had to make the deal. Between incidents like this and his claims to his friends that he was an intelligence agent, and
2006 was still George Bush. The plot thickens.
His fake passport, and a seemingly endless supply of money from unknown sources have fueled speculation that Epstein was in fact an agent for Mossad, looking to blackmail U.S. government officials into unconditional support for Israel.
This has been panned by Israeli Twitter accounts recently, but I wouldn't put it past Mossad, to be frank. They are some of the most devious jackasses, murderous fucks on the face of the planet Earth. If you were to run for president in the United States with the intention of reining in Israel, your first priority is to task the CIA with killing Mossad. They will kill you. They are the book you should read on Mossad. Pick it up. It's called Rise and Kill First. There is nothing they will not do, no crime they will not commit. So while I do not believe that there is necessarily direct evidence at this point that links Epstein to a particular intelligence agency, his behaviors, okay, the reality is the Epstein Island is said to be entirely wired for sound and camera, and his mansion was wired for this as well. In fact, he took a cleaning lady he had into a room with a secret door, and she said that there were men in there watching peephole cameras in his mansion. This story implies to me that this is an operation because he either employed these men to watch the cameras, which would be odd. Why not just take the footage and watch it yourself if this is you pretending to be a spy? Or somebody assigned them to Epstein. It's not impossible. It's not beyond the realm of possibility.
Indeed, since 2008, he has taken multiple trips to Israeli military bases, and in 2015, Epstein invested heavily in Carbine, a startup company associated with the Israeli defense industry. Carbine's CEO was a former Special Forces officer. Its director was one of Epstein's closest friends and a former commander of the IDF cyber unit and director general of the military defense for Israel. And the head of Carbine was none other than former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak. Now, whether for his own use or for some unknown agency,
Ehud Barak, by the way, is the man who botched the 2000 Camp David summit and Talba summit afterwards. He managed to turn what would have been a peace deal into a disaster by demanding far more than the Israel deserved.
Epstein clearly was interested in obtaining blackmail material on powerful people. He concealed pinhole cameras in all of his residence in every room, including the bathrooms. He allegedly would set up parties and lend women to powerful people, both to ingratiate himself to them and to obtain blackmail material by secretly recording them having intercourse with underage girls. The U.S. Justice Department says that it found hundreds of compact discs of recordings of these sex acts locked in a safe in his New York apartment. Courts have identified
Labeled.
100
Labeled, by the way, with the individual in question, who was caught in flagrante fragago with a underage girl.
84 Jane Doe victims of Epstein. Of all of these victims, the best known and most famous is Virginia Giuffre. At the age of 14, she began working as a spa attendant at the Donald Trump Mar-a-Lago resort. There, she met Ghislaine Maxwell and was offered extra work performing massages. Maxwell groomed her and forced her into sex work. Her first sexual encounters were all with Epstein, but Giuffre testified that she was later expected to have sex with others, including Alan Dershowitz, former New Mexico governor and UN ambassador Bill Richardson, and Prince Andrew, the younger brother of Charles, King of England. Multiple Epstein victims testified to seeing Prince Andrew with Giuffre as far back as 2001, including one who testified that Giuffre told her that she had been ordered to sleep with him when she was only 14. Prince Andrew's name, as well as private contact information for Buckingham Palace, are indeed in Epstein's book. The Daily Telegraph published photos of Andrew and Maxwell.
This was a not insubstantial scandal for the royal family.
Together, giving a tour of Buckingham Palace to Kevin Spacey and President Bill Clinton. In 2020, Prince Andrew was reported to be the target of a criminal investigation.
Kevin Spacey, also known for pedophilia.
By the police and FBI in the United States. By the end of 2022.
Also, I'm not saying that anyone in chat is going to say this, but anyone who comes into my comments afterward and says, it's not pedophilia, it's ebophilia, get fucked.
He had been excommunicated from the royal family and was no longer receiving money of any kind from the British government, nor was he allowed to be seen with the royals in public. He has a private protection detail and rent associated with his Royal Lodge home. These expenses come to roughly $4 million a year and appear to be paid by his brother, the King of England. Meanwhile, Dershowitz strongly denied having sex with Giuffre and countersued her. In an
by the way, don't say that to Brooks. Okay, I won't. Oh, don't say it about Kevin Spacey? No. Here's my problem. Broadly speaking, with people are like, oh, it's a special class if you're hitting on and sleeping with teenagers. No, it's not. I will fully cop to the fact that the age of majority, 18, that we use in the United States for your ability to, for example, get a loan or go to war or buy a pack of cigarettes is arbitrary. And it could very well be raised. It shouldn't be lowered. But like my point is that like teenagers are not powerful in any kind of sense. They are not given a position of authority in society as adults. And they're kind of transitioning, and they should be, I think, protected broadly. They should be protected broadly from people preying on them, from things like getting into predatory loans that so many college students get into anyway, to get a credit cards that are credit card debt, things like that. They should be protected from that. They should have an opportunity to be to become adults in an environment that is not going to take advantage of them. So, like, whether or not you agree with the age of majority or the age of consent, I think they are vital things, and the age of consent and marriage in every state should be higher. It should be 18 across the board. These states where you get, like, I have parental permission to marry this 14-year-old. That's gross. That's fucked up and gross. It just needs to go away. It should be higher. And I recognize that it's imperfect and not great, that it doesn't provide protection in that way past the age of 18, but like it has to happen somewhere. Um, and for what it's worth, that's probably an as good a place as any that doesn't suck. Like, uh, yeah, I like, so like this idea of separating it from pedophilia does to me, like, no, you're just as bad as the guy who's trying to lure the little children out in the van. You're just as bad as that, even though you're trying to act more sophisticated. Fuck you. It's not northern aggression. There are states in the north of the United States that do allow that kind of marriage to occur. It's disgusting. It really is. Like, and it's not. It's a religious exception that we have effectively created. It's mostly for largely fringe Christian religious cults. It's bad. Like, a 14-year-old shouldn't be getting married at all, ever. What the fuck? It is, no, you. Uh, that's just wrong. Like, kids should be able to be fucking kids and do things. And it goes back to what I said at the beginning of the stream, how we treat children like property. No, it's disgusting. It is not good. It's not okay.
His closed settlement agreement, she admitted that she could have been wrong about Dershowitz and mistaken him for someone else. Speculation that he did in fact attend multiple sex parties has continued.
I don't know. Alan Dershowitz is pretty remarkable. I suspect that she just didn't have the money to fight that fucking rich lawyer from Harvard
to dog him, and last week, when Pam Bondi refused to release the Epstein files, Dershowitz took to social media to say this.
Every document would prove I was innocent. So let me tell you, I know for a fact documents are being suppressed. And they're being suppressed to protect individuals. I know the names of the individuals. I know why they're being suppressed. I know who's suppressing them. But I'm bound by confidentiality from a judge and cases, and I can't disclose what I know. But I hand to God.
Like, look, he's droopy fucking dog with glasses. Now that I've said it, you can't unsee it.
I know the names of people whose files are being suppressed.
One of them is Alan.
In order to protect them.
On July 6, 2019, Epstein was arrested by a joint NYPD-FBI task force for the sex trafficking of minors. They seized thousands of photos and compact disc videos and his long-expired fake Australian passport. He was sent to the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York and was denied bail, seeing as he had a great deal of resources, his own island, and multiple properties in other countries to which he could flee.
Northern aggression happened to the South Sea. No, that's not what happened. That was a secession crisis. And depends on the deal you make. Northern aggression is what the neo-Confederates call the North's effort to force the South to stop rebelling. When the South starts seizing forts and armories in the months prior to Lincoln's inauguration, that's called the secession crisis.
On August 10th, barely a month after his arrest, Epstein was found dead in his cell. The pathologist found multiple broken bones, including the hyoid bone in the neck. He concluded that this was from Epstein flinging himself from his bunk with such great force in an effort to strangle himself. However, Epstein lawyers sent their own pathologist, Michael Baden, to observe the autopsy, and Baden did not concur. He noted that the hyoid bone is broken about 6% of the time in strangulation suicides, where it's broken 80% of the time in strangulation murders. He also doubted that Epstein, at 6 feet tall, could have successfully hung himself from the lower bunk. However, given the absence of any witnesses to the contrary, the medical examiner ruled the death a suicide.
Okay, this is kind of tricky. I actually looked into some inquests. The medical examiner for the state was not wrong, in my opinion, to rule it a suicide absent any other findings. 80%, 6%, what have you, that does not rule out the chance that that does not rule out the chance that it's not the case. 6% still allows you 6 out of 100 cases for it to occur. Also, what's the name? Hang on. The family, United Kingdom, that did all that freaky shit and buried their daughter and like 20 or something other women under the garden. Oh, I know the name of this. Jesus, why can't I remember it now? Give me a second. Bear with me. Looking it up. No, nope, 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 nope. That's not it. Oh, damn it. What's the name of that? Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Anyone know what I'm talking about off the top of my head, or am I not describing it? Let me look it up. Jesus, I know this. 25 Cromwell Street, UK. Yes, Fred and Rose West. The case of Fred and Rose West in the United Kingdom. Don't go looking that up, by the way. It's horrifying. Like, some of the most depraved shit you can imagine. Yeah, Fred West, thank you. Some of the most depraved shit you can imagine. But Fred West, if I recall, did hang himself from the bottom bunk successfully. And good riddance to him, to be perfectly frank. But Fred West, it was not Jeffrey Epstein, but Jeffrey Epstein adjacent is definitely hung himself from the bottom bunk.
Maxwell, meanwhile, was arrested on July 2nd, 2020, and charged with multiple counts of sex trafficking of children and conspiracy. She was convicted in 2021 on 5 counts and sentenced to 20 years in prison. To spare the victims the unnecessary trauma of testifying publicly to what happened to them, only 4 victims, including Jeffrey, were covered by the indictments. This is 4 out of 184 Jane Doe Epstein victims, roughly 2% of them. This means that only a tiny fraction of the Epstein evidence, the minimum amount needed to obtain a conviction, was unsealed for Maxwell's trial, while the rest remains in the hands of the FBI and NYPD. Meanwhile, Epstein's former butler, Alfredo Rodriguez,
which I'm going to point out makes the situation that Pam Bondi is having grand jury files unsealed ridiculously inadequate. Makes it ridiculously inadequate because the evidence that the grand jury doesn't get isn't included in the grand jury files. Therefore, you wouldn't find out about it and have that evidence. So, like, they're doing the bare minimum at best that will reveal nothing of anything of substance, because I guarantee you that any American president who might have been an Epstein client is probably not included in those files.
Decided to try to profit from this and took Epstein's contact book, the black book everyone talks about, and tried to sell it to the Epstein victims for $50,000. The book contained over 5,000 entries, addresses, emails, cell phones, home phones, business and private numbers, and contact information for 1,571 people. When trying to sell the book to an undercover agent, he was arrested and sentenced to 18 months for failing to turn it over to the police. He said that he had kept the book as insurance so that he wasn't murdered. Shortly after Rodriguez was released from prison, he died of mesothelioma. Now, the problem with this book is it's not a client list. It's actually unlikely that Epstein codified a formal client list, and there's never been any indication that he had one, just his address book. And while it's quite likely that nearly every one of his clients is listed in the book, it's also likely that many of the people in this book had.
Yeah, that's my problem in this particular case. As best as I like, Epstein would be stupid to create a list. Epstein would be stupid to create a list. He would be smart to keep the recordings, but stupid to create a list. So, like, the list that everyone's talking about probably doesn't exist. And like when I Nick is saying, the client book may very well contain people who are not guilty of these crimes.
Nothing to do with his business. It appears he documented any contact information for any person he's ever met. The book contained a host of mundane numbers, like numbers for dry cleaners.
No, aren't the labeled tapes the list? I mean, yes, but not really. And the labeled tapes are not all entered into evidence that can be released, because the labeled tapes are not all used as trial evidence in a grand jury.
Or for the shop where he got his car detailed. Stephen Hawking's personal contact information was in the book, and I suspect Stephen Hawking's attendance at any of these parties would have been unmistakable. And while many people have demanded that the book be released, it's actually been out for quite a while. In late 2020, Leland Nally, a reporter from Mother Jones, actually called every number in the book, finding people who didn't know who Epstein was, people who had just gotten a new number, and people who did know who he was. And yes, some of them were princes, dukes, and other high-profile members of governments of multiple countries. Indeed, In Time has a unredacted copy of this document, as well as the testimony and evidence that we reference here on this show, and it is available on our Discord to anyone who is interested.
It is. I think it's in the Titan, correct me if I'm wrong, the Epstein implications section on the In Time Discord. Excuse me. I'm going to go look. Give me a second. Titan knows where it is. He'll tell you. Titan's got that place locked down tight.
In defending his decision not to release the Epstein files, Trump has argued that if there was anything
I'll just point out, I checked Titan and it's not pinned. You might want to pin it.
incriminating in them, it would have been released by the Democrats. The problem is that Epstein wasn't partisan. He didn't care if you were a Democrat or a Republican. If you had power, social power, financial power, political power, he collected dirt on you. He collected people. Indeed, we already know that Bill and Hillary Clinton's personal cell phone numbers were in that book. Also listed in the book were Harvey Weinstein, Alec Baldwin, Michael Jackson, David Copperfield, Woody Allen, Katie Couric, Rupert Murdoch, David Koch, Richard Branson, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Michael Bloomberg, Andrew Cuomo, John Kerry, former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, former President George W. Bush, Tipper Gore, and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman.
That's a list of people I hate. Oh, wait.
Interestingly, of the 1,571 people in this book, 38 names were circled, including Prince Andrew, former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, and President Donald J. Trump. We don't know when Trump first met Epstein, but their friendship started in the 80s. Flight logs released from Epstein's personal plane, dubbed the Lolita Express, showed Trump using the plane repeatedly throughout.
Oh, that's not creepy at all. No, that's not. No. God, I hate these people so much.
The 90s. In a 2002 interview with New York Magazine, Trump said, quote, "I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. It's even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. No doubt about it, Jeffrey enjoys his social life." In this clip from Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort in 2002, we see a particularly gruesome encounter where Epstein is welcomed into the party and he and Trump appear to discuss their mutual interest in young women.
Yet, a tape in the NBC archives of a Mar-a-Lago party shows Trump giving Epstein his personal attention. The footage, shot in November of 1992, before Trump opened the resort as a club, shows the future president surrounded by cheerleaders for the Buffalo Bills and Miami Dolphins, capturing Trump's fun-loving bachelor lifestyle for an appearance on Faith Daniels' NBC talk show.
We're going to get great ratings in your show.
Trump is surrounded by women as music blares in the background. After a while, Trump goes to greet 3 new guests, among them the financier Jeffrey Epstein.
Come on in. Go inside.
More than a decade before his guilty plea on state prostitution charges. Later in the footage, Trump is seen talking to Epstein and another man as women are dancing in front of them. Trump alternates between dancing and pointing out women to Epstein and the other man and telling Epstein about the cameras. Though exactly what they say is difficult to understand as they discuss the women and their appearances, Trump gestures to one and appears to say to Epstein, "Look at her back there. She's hot."
None of this is like good behavior, but none of it's strictly speaking illegal. My understanding is NFL cheerleaders are adults.
And then Trump says something else into Epstein's ear that makes him double over.
Look, gentlemen, acknowledging the beauty of a woman is not a bad thing, but acknowledge it respectfully. Okay? Just do it. Just, and like, come on. Don't be fucking gross.
With laughter. But as the president says now,
Their relationship ended in 2004 when Trump and Epstein got into a bidding war on a Palm Beach property, with Trump ultimately winning. This ended their friendship, and when Epstein pled guilty to child prostitution in 2008, Trump began walking back the history of their relationship and started to claim that he had never done business with or even known Epstein in the past. However, in 2016, Trump was a co-defendant in a suit with Epstein, where it was claimed that Epstein had procured a 13-year-old girl for Trump with whom Trump had had sex. I'm going to play just over a minute of the deposition, but trigger warning, and a minute is plenty.
I met Donald Trump at some parties I attend that I was working for Mr. Jeffrey Epstein. There was about 3 or 4 times that I had encounters with Donald Trump. I was 13. The first time that I met Donald Trump was at a party at Jeffrey Epstein's mansion. There was an orgy going on, and he was kind of watching off in the distance. And
the image of Donald Trump at an orgy was not one I needed.
And he basically asked if I could come over and give him a hand job. And at first, I wasn't very comfortable with it. This was like my first party, and I didn't think that was my responsibility. But my recruiter told me that I needed to do it, so I agreed to. And then he, began to. Sorry, this is a little difficult, but. Before I gave him a hand job, he kind of slapped my hand away and said, "You need to use a glove." And the recruiter, he ran over and handed me a glove and said, "No one touches Mr. Trump's penis without a glove."
The testimony continues to describe a number of acts in great detail, including and ultimately the two of them having sex. Again, the girl was...
Shudder.
The case suffered from several technical setbacks, including jurisdiction in a civil versus criminal court. And ultimately, given that the Supreme Court has made Trump virtually untouchable, it is not clear if there is going to be a resolution to these allegations. So what we have here is that Epstein appears to have trafficked in roughly 180 underage girls. He appears to have set them up for his clients, recorded many of the encounters, and the FBI and NYPD has most of this information in their archives. But the most compelling evidence, the video discs, can't be released publicly for obvious reasons. And with Epstein dead, there's no mechanism like a trial for publicly evaluating who was implicated in what he did. However, given all of the evidence, it's credible to say that there's a reasonable possibility that Donald Trump is contained in those files, possibly even video footage from one of the hundreds of cameras on every one of Epstein's properties. Even if there's no footage, if Trump attended even one of these parties or had sex with any of the Epstein victims, you can rest assured he can't take the risk of letting any of this information out. And people associate...
Which is why the effort that Pam Bondi is making to release those grand jury tapes is what it is, because they are very limited in scope and will probably not include Donald Trump. So what's going to happen is they will release those tapes, probably successfully. They will say, look at this evidence, and it will not include anyone of particular note that you expect. And the right-wing little shills, little Trump freaks will get up and say, see, Donald Trump isn't included in the evidence, conveniently ignoring the context that most of the evidence has remained sealed and locked away. And this will continue on being a conspiracy theory for many people. And in that vein, and because it is a conspiracy theory, it will continue to not be taken seriously. And all of those girls, those women now, will never find justice. And it is an absolute fucking travesty.
With this are dying fast. Jean-Luc Brunel, a French model scout who allegedly brought Epstein girls as young as 12, killed himself in a Paris jail while awaiting trial on rape charges. Alfredo Rodriguez, the Epstein butler who tried to sell the Black Book, died from mesothelioma just months after being released from jail. Miss Giuffre, the most vocal of the Epstein victims, died by suicide even after her therapist declared her mentally well and not at risk to kill herself. Bill Richardson, the former governor of New Mexico.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily call myself a happy person. I am in no danger of committing suicide whatsoever. Just a thought. Just a note.
Mexico, who she implicated, is dead too, by the way. And of course, Epstein survived only a month in jail before he was killed.
A month in a federal prison during the administration of Donald Trump. Coincidence? We report. You decide.
Given the vast power of social media, the modern telephone, aircraft, video recording devices, and the like, and this contact book with over 1,500 names in it, many of them some of the most powerful people in the world, and 180 victims over several decades, it's easy to conclude that this could very well be one of the largest and most far-reaching criminal conspiracies in human history. And while there's no conclusive proof that Trump is involved,
nah, man. I think they went to the moon landing to fake film the moon landings. That's the one.
There's some pretty compelling evidence, and he's certainly not impartial. We've seen just 2% of the Epstein files, just enough to convict Ghislaine Maxwell, and already what we know is mind-blowing. It could easily implicate presidents, prime ministers, royalty across half a dozen countries in everything from conspiracy and bribery to rape and the sex trafficking of children. But Trump, who was a big proponent of hyping up the files when it was revealed that the Clintons were in the book and had used the Epstein plane themselves, now has decided not to release anything further or appoint an independent special prosecutor to get to the bottom of this, which literally is what a special prosecutor is there for. And while I'm shocked and delighted that MAGA is taking this so seriously, I can't help but think that it's not because they actually want accountability, but because they think it's only going to be Democrats on the list. I don't think any of the people pushing right now for Trump to release the files have truly considered the possibility that the man that they trusted to drain the swamp may himself be one of Epstein's biggest and most regular clients. And it is where the water meets that bridge where we'll see if MAGA has the faith of their own convictions, or if they are the cult-like puppets of a megalomaniac con man that liberals have said they are.
That's the one. Not the first one, the second one.
That is what the Epstein files are and why they are so important.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Nick did a great job. Go subscribe to In Time. I am not going to belabor the point tonight. Thank you all for coming. We will be back Wednesday, hypothetically. I will be seeing a surgeon this week about my arm and hopefully getting that taken care of. And that will kind of affect the schedule going forward. Have a good night. That's it. Stop listening to me. I'm out.